morning, everybody. This is Tuesday. What are we? January 23rd. And this is the meeting of the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 on March 29, 2023, Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects. That act included an extension until March 31st, 2025 of the remote meeting provisions. We will meet today via remote participation by the board. I'm going to do a quick roll call. Actually, Steph, do you have the full list of full list of the board members?
Yes, I can do that. So attendance for the board members or ex officio as well?
Let's do the whole list.
Okay. Rob?
Yes, here.
Nancy Hyde?
Here.
Chris Path?
He will not be making it.
Okay. Maya Plotkin?
Here.
Phil Shapiro? I didn't see him. Paul Cherry? I don't think he's coming.
Those two could not make it.
Julie Bride?
Here.
Nancy James?
Here.
Melissa McDonough?
I don't think we ever got a response from Melissa.
Paula?
Paula McLaughlin? You're on mute.
I see her. Dan Weller?
Here.
Dan is traveling.
Skip Wells. I saw Skip.
Here.
And then Chris Coleman?
You're on mute, Chris. He's coughing. He's here.
Okay. Molly Keene? I know I saw
Here.
her. Thanks. Pat Ahern?
Present.
Nora? No, she was
Here.
Right. Todd? Todd's here. Lemma?
Here.
Kim?
Here.
Elijah? I don't know if I saw him.
Did not
Nora,
see-
is he coming?
Great.
Did I just hear him? Sorry if I missed him. Nope.
As far as I know, he's coming.
Okay. I'll let him in if he pops in. And then Jimmy McCarthy? Thank you. And I'm here.
All right. Good morning to everybody and welcome to the first Long Range Financial Planning Committee meeting of 2024. Hope everybody had a great holiday season. First off, I just want to do, as part of the chair's update, let you know that...
Rob, can you ask if anybody else is recording the meeting, please?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I'll grant permission that we record the meeting. We're recording it via Zoom, and ask, is there anyone else wishing to record the meeting? Seeing none, I will jump back into the chair's update. Thank you, Pat.
Sorry.
So just want to update folks on the outcome of special town meeting. Many thanks to all of those of you that I saw at the meeting. And for those of you who weren't there, we did approve the use of free cash combined with the ARPA money to proceed with the design and bid documents for Fire Station 1. Now, as you will recall, when we last met, I advised you that the Select Board had agreed with this committee's recommendation to conduct that comprehensive facility study across town that includes both municipal and school buildings. And that study is going to help us understand the condition, the need, the urgency, and prospective costs associated with each facility. That will help us in providing prioritization recommendations to the Select Board, as we all know that we can't afford to do everything on our list at once. So, given that the commissioning of the study is in process, we decided to use this morning's meeting to talk about the other side of the ledger. We have talked about, and I've reinforced that just about every one of these meetings, that as a community, we're bound by Prop 2.5, which means our total tax levy can only grow by 2.5% plus new growth and anything else we vote as a community. So new growth, especially commercial new growth, is critical in helping us afford both ongoing operational service needs as well as the major capital projects such as those we've been talking about. Now, as a reminder, only 6% of our land in Westwood is currently zoned for commercial use. That 6% of land accounts for roughly 13% of assessed valuations. And with the tax shift, that they bear about 22% of our tax burden. When we redeveloped University Station, commercial property as a percent of total valuations had bounced back to roughly 20%. But between the expanded residential development and red hot residential market since, commercial values as a percent of total has fallen back to about 13%, which has a real and direct impact on homeowners. So with us today is Nora Loughnane, our Director of Economic Development, and she's going to give us an update on a variety of projects that will add to new growth. So welcome, Nora, and I'll turn that over to you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. So I want to start by just giving you just a quick rundown on what our department does to give you a framework for how we assess what the current situation is as far as commercial development. Let's see how I can get this to move on. All right, so this is just a very quick, I won't go through it in detail, but just to show you that the Department of Community and Economic Development includes the building department, zoning, conservation, planning, and health, and it serves all the different boards from the planning board, obviously the select board, the zoning board, historical commission, conservation commission, housing partnership and fair housing committee, and the board of health. So we deal with land use permitting. We review applications for subdivision approvals, for open space residential development, special permits, EIDR approvals, that's essentially site plan, that's what we call it in Westwood, flexible multiple use overlay district, special permits, those are mixed use development permits in town. The MBTA community zoning, which is something that we've only had for about 1.5 years now, that's what we call our Mumford mixed use multifamily overlay district. We review earth material movement approvals, wireless communication facility approvals, historic structure demolition approvals. We have the conservation agent who goes through wetlands and stormwater management applications. Zoning agent handles accessory apartments, special permits, and dimensional variances. We have the health department working on food permits. Licensing agent handles alcohol, CV licenses, as well as licenses, for instance, for car dealers. And one of the most important things we do is issue building and trade permits for all of the development in town. We also have a community planning function, and we're responsible for several ongoing responsibilities. One is the comprehensive master plan, which was last updated in 2020, the open space and recreation plan, our hazard mitigation plan, stormwater management plan. Our town planner, Elijah Romulus, is currently working on a climate action, resiliency, and sustainability plan. We also handle updates to rules and regulations for all of the boards under our land use department. We work on bylaw amendments and warrant articles. Currently, the planning board is proposing 7 warrant articles for the May 6th town meeting. Serve as a liaison to local businesses, potential businesses, and property owners. And we participate in regional coordination and collaboration. For instance, we just submitted a grant application along with our neighbors in Dedham, Canton, and Norwood for a last mile shuttle bus service.
Geez, what do you do all day?
It's a busy department. So I want to talk just a little bit on the limits on commercial development. And Rob, you just touched on most of them, so I will be briefer than expected. So first, we have scarcity of commercial land. Only 6%, as Rob said, only 6% of our land area is zoned for commercial use. That means approximately 430 acres. And they're spread across generally 4 commercial districts. The University Avenue Industrial District, the Providence Highway, Southwest Park, Glacier Everett Highway Business District, Washington Street's Local Business B District, and High Street's Local Business A District. We also have various overlay districts. We have the University Avenue Mixed Use District, the Flexible Multiple Use Overlay District. There are actually 7 of those scattered throughout the town. And the Mumford, that's what I just spoke of as the MBTA community's required zoning.
Nora, hold 1 second. I see Julie Bride has a question.
Thanks, Rob. Quick question, Nora. How does our percent of commercial land use compare to other like towns? Is 6% high or low?
So I would say it's low in comparison to most towns. If you compare us to Dover, it's high.
Right,
But
exactly.
if you compare us to Needham, to Wellesley, to Norwood, Dedham, Canton, Sharon, it is low.
what would they be? 10, 15, 35? Like just guesstimate.
I would say they are all over 10. I don't
Okay.
have the numbers in front of me, but that's something
Okay.
I could find
That's
out for you.
helpful. Thank you. Just relative.
So we also have a limited number of businesses. There are approximately 700 businesses currently in Westwood, but fewer than 300 of those are brick and mortar for-profit businesses that we draw commercial tax revenue from. 32 of those businesses contribute to the meals and hotel tax, and that's a plus. The remaining 400 business are home occupations and exempt or nonprofit organizations, which do not pay any commercial tax. So we also have the issue of the relative commercial value, the value of our commercial property as a portion of our overall total property value in town. Back in 1991, we had 25% of the town's overall property value was attributable to commercial uses. By 2015, it had fallen to 2.5%. In between there, we first worked on the Westwood Station project, which was had some issues with the economy at the time. Then we moved forward with the University Avenue development, and that had an extreme, immediate, positive impact on our commercial property value. By 2019, our property value had increased to 15.9%. We were on our way back to trying to get up to a 20% value. I'm not sure. I think in an interim, we might have been a little bit higher than that, but that's the highest year-end value that I've seen in the past 10 years. Then we saw drastically rising residential values, and these were exacerbated during the pandemic. By fiscal year 22, our property value had started to decline again, down to 15.6%. By 2023, it was down to 14.62%. And in this current tax cycle, it's been determined that our commercial property value is only 12.93. We're almost back to where we were prior to University Station.
Nora, if I may just hit pause there for a second. And so
Sure.
when I say that has real implications, on homeowners. So when you think about we are governed by Prop 2.5 plus new growth and whatever we as a community vote, in this case, it's been the Pine Hill School. So, the tax increase X the new school would have been about 3.5%. Then you add what was roughly 5%. So we should have been in about the 8% range. But people's actual, tax bills, when they opened them at the beginning of the year, were up about 12%. That reflects that shift in the commercial property value, that dropping from, 25% or 26% in last fiscal year down to about 22% this year. That additional 4% of the pie moved over onto the backs of residential homeowners. And so that's a piece, when I say this is critically important to our sustainable future, that's what I'm talking about, is the commercial development slice of the pie cannot continue to shrink. We need more. I see Paula has a question.
So what is, I'm sure Nora's going to get to this, but what are businesses leaving? What's going on? Why is this happening?
No,
It's such
they
a
aren't.
drastic rate.
So it's a pretty simple equation. So the fiscal year 24 overall property value increased by 21.87%. However, the residential property value increased by 24.29%, while the commercial value only increased by 7.75%.
So Paula,
commercial value is going up. It's just not going up at the rate that the residential rate is.
Okay, so because resi's so high, it's
yes, we are
okay.
forever chasing the residential value. The commercial value, it simply cannot keep up. Now, just keep in mind, the University Station project was the biggest project we will likely ever see in Westwood. That was about roughly $250 million worth of new growth property value that came to Westwood. For comparison purposes, the car dealerships on Route 1 or the Islington Center redevelopment or any other development is at most $500,000 of new growth. So it's a significant, a huge project. And that project bought us about 10 years of staying with the needle moving on. So just to give you an idea, this is an extremely large problem to try and get commercial value to grow at a rate that's sustainable.
Yeah, and if you think about it, just Paula, from what's been going on in the economy, right? So high interest rates, people have stayed in their homes longer, right? So the inventory on the market is far lower, as you saw. I think we've had the lowest home sales in the Commonwealth since 2011. So inventory is tight, supply is high, supply is low, demand is high, prices stay high, right? So that drove that assessed valuation 3 times higher on the residential side, and the inverse is also true on the commercial side. As hybrid work took place with respect to the pandemic, demand for office space is down. That impacts some of the retail around office space that supports that. So you can see why commercial couldn't keep pace with the hot market that Westwood is in the residential sector.
Just as a point of fact, at Fox Hill last year, our average apartment sold for 12% over asking.
And I'm sure the asking was significantly higher than it was in prior years as well. Yep.
True.
Sorry, Nora, continue.
Sure. So Rob had alluded to our tax shift factor. Like many towns in Massachusetts, we have 2 different tax rates, a commercial tax rate and a residential tax rate. The tax shift factor is what the Board of Assessors proposed for determining how you're going to shift some of the tax burden, a greater portion, to the commercial property owners than you put on the residential property owners. So the tax shift factor can be anywhere from 1 to 1.75. In fiscal year 24, back in December, the Board of Assessors recommended a shift factor to the Select Board of 1.72, and the Select Board implemented that. So just to take a step back, if we didn't have a split tax rate, if there was no shift factor, or if the shift factor went back to 1, then the tax rate for all businesses, commercial and residential, would have been set at $14.35 per $1,000 of value. So what that would do is it would take the average residential property, and their tax bill would increase immediately by approximately $1,800. So it's a significant savings to property owners, and that's just for the average tax bill. For larger tax bills in Westwood would be significantly increased.
And just on that tax shift factor, that has traditionally been sort of in the 1.65 to 1.7 range. This year, the Board of Assessors recommended a slightly higher shift factor to try and make up for some of the change in assessed values between residential and commercial. And we agreed with that, but we didn't want to go all the way to 1.75 because that would leave us no room for future mitigation in the event that we needed it. So that's why there are many communities that are already at 1.75 and experience similar rises in residential property values, and they didn't have any tools to be able to sort of help mitigate that.
Yes, and another reason you don't want to go too high on the shift factor is you don't want to put too much of a burden on the commercial users. You want to maintain competitiveness with surrounding communities on attracting businesses to town. So our commercial tax rate in fiscal year 24, our commercial property value is less than 13% of our overall value. However, the commercial properties actually pay more than 22% of our tax levy. So they're already shouldering quite a bit of burden. As the commercial and residential values continue to diverge, the tax shift might push that commercial tax rate too high for Westwood to remain competitive. So right now, for this year, the Select Board has set the residential tax rate at 12.81, a significant drop in the rate from previous years to balance out the high residential values that it would be assessed against. The commercial tax rate has gone down just slightly to 24.86, $24.68, sorry, per $1,000 of value. So I just grabbed, and I apologize for the quality of these, Stephanie. I was putting this together very late last night and didn't want to bother you to get copies. So I just pulled these off of the Select Board meeting, your presentation to the Select Board meeting in December. So this slide just shows how the change in percentage of town property value has played out over time. If you look at that graph there, you can see what we were talking about from 1991 to today, how that commercial value as a percentage of overall value has continued to decline. We had a little bit of a bump in the, I think that was the early 2000s. And then the most recent bump was during the Westwood Station, University Station development. And now it has started to decline again. And as we mentioned, the decline is not due to declining values of commercial property. It's in relation to residential property. And then this slide just gives you another way of looking at how the property values, especially the residential property values, have increased over the past few years. So in the second line there, you can see the average home value in fiscal year 22 was just over $800,000. It jumped up quite a bit to $927 in fiscal year 23, and then quite a bit more to over $1.1 million in fiscal year 24. And the tax bill has to make a similar jump. So the tax bill in 22 for this average property was just over $12,000. This year, it's nearly $15,000, a significant jump. And you can see how the change is just increasing year after year.
Just to clarify, though, that increase is not driven by the assessed values. That increase is the addition of the Pine Hill School to the exempt debt portion of the tax bill. I want to be really clear. The assessed values are a denominator in the function that sets the actual tax rate. The tax bill itself can only go up by 2.5% plus new growth and whatever we as a community vote. And in this case, in fiscal year 24, that jump is in part due to Pine Hill School being in its first year on the rolls.
Right. And so that tax bill is set with a much reduced tax rate because the residential values have gone up so much, the rate had to come down low enough. So this also shows you that the savings from the split tax rate in fiscal year 24 is just under $1,800. So then I just wanted to talk about some commercial development. So back from 2012 to 2020, we had a good bit of growth, especially at University Station. So looking at some of that development, the University Avenue area saw University Station added 750,000 square feet of retail, restaurant, and service uses, 175,000 square feet of office, 130-room hotel, 64-unit memory care facility, which ends up on the residential side of the ledger, and the Lifetime Fitness development. All of that brings in over $7.5 million in tax receipts each year. Providence Highway Avenue, we added Progressive Insurance and several car dealerships. The Audi, Porsche, Acura, and Mazda car dealerships were all developed during that period. Washington Street area, we had the Islington Center mixed-use development, brought in a number of new businesses, redeveloped, created 2 brand new buildings, one of which was a mixed-use building, and renovated and substantially improved an existing building. Businesses in that area are CVS, Orange Theory, Neroli Mercado, as well as the restaurant, Salon Cabello, Higher Ground Fitness, Lashes, Stark Weather Shepley, Edward Jones, and the Muffin House. All great businesses, really significantly improving the commercial value in Islington Center. So then commercial development over the last 2 years has continued to grow. So I think this is important to know that we are not seeing stagnation. In the University Avenue area, we saw the Grillo's Pickles come in to share the Makita building. Several new businesses have come in over the past 2 years at University Station. Pokey Brothers, Birdie's Hot Chicken, the Good Feet Store, Xfinity Store by Comcast, AT&T Store, J. Crew Factory Store opened recently. We had Five Below, and now one of our latest new businesses is the Five Tool Performance Baseball Training Facility that's just outside University Station in the former, I think it was the former Caputo Cheese building at 200 University Ave. In the Providence Highway area, over the last 2 years, we saw Gatehouse Kitchens, which is a ghost kitchen facility located at Southwest Park. Aston Martin Boston opened at 340 Providence Highway. We saw a second Colbia Shell Station, Seasons and Mary Lou, open at 394 Washington Street to add to the one at 394 Providence Highway to add to the one at 75 Providence Highway. And we saw the Ira Mazda dealership redeveloped at 420 Providence Highway.
Nora, what's a ghost kitchen?
Oh, I'm sorry. That is a facility that allows business owners to come in and produce their products at the kitchen for distribution, or sometimes it's for online sales, sometimes it's for delivery or for catering. It's often a mom and pop business that doesn't have a commercial kitchen available to it. So Gatehouse Kitchens produced, I believe it's 12 individual kitchens that are then leased to businesses who need a kitchen to produce that.
And that means the Board of Health is okay with the products coming out of those kitchens.
Yes. Yes, it's all regulated. There are permits issued for each of those.
Nancy, it's a phenomenon that really was born from COVID, right? I mean, when a lot of restaurants had to go to doing, delivery only, there were others that said, "Well, we could just make this a business," and so that's exactly.
Well, I'll tell you, the demand was there long before COVID. When I was economic development director in Newton, there were plenty of people that would say, "Is there a place like a kitchen we can go to be able to create this great product I have?" So I think, that might have heightened it, but it's great that somebody's actually got the business model for it. It's a good business. It's a good thing to do.
It is. So in the Washington Street area, we saw just a couple of other new businesses outside of Islington Center. We saw outside of that redevelopment project, we saw Busy Paws Pet Supply come into the Islington Center Pizza Building, and Nightingale Wealth Solutions moved into the old, drawing a blank, I can't remember the name, Lambury Construction was in that building previously. And then the High Street area over the last couple of years, we saw Benone European Hair Design, Pliables, Skin Defined Med Spa at the Mackenzie Plaza near Dunkin' Donuts, and Bark and Buzz Grooming. Dog businesses are big in Westwood. So then commercial development that's pending in 2024, still not slowing down, especially in the University Avenue area. We have 24 Technologies, which is a lithium-ion battery manufacturer research and development facility that's under development at 26 Dartmouth Street. The labs
Nora, they're also bringing, we will be their corporate headquarters as well, right? Besides just research and development.
They also are maintaining a headquarters in Cambridge, so they are splitting their development between the two properties.
Gotcha.
The labs at 128, this is 690 Canton Street, which had previously been an office building. It's now been refurbished as lab space. The space remains unleased, but they have several individual lab developments that are being offered for lease at 690 Canton Street. We have several new businesses coming into University Station. By the end of the year, we expect there to be a 0% vacancy rate at the University Station commercial area.
Before you leave this slide, I see that Julie has a question. Sorry.
Nora, can you just note which ones on this list are not paying taxes that are not for profit? So like, I assume Mass General, probably Dana-Farber, we're not getting any.
Right, those are two nonprofits. The rest are all for-profit commercial businesses.
And
but we have several financial deals with them.
Correct.
We have pilot agreements, payment in lieu of taxes agreements with both organizations. So the businesses that are coming into the University Station core retail area are V&O Med Spa, Bath and Body Works, a new Ann Taylor factory store. This Chase Bank is going into the space that was previously occupied by Casa Loca Restaurant. And there's a cola facility that is coming into the former Men's Warehouse space. The Mass General Brigham and
Nora?
Women expand. Yes.
Oops, sorry. When we're looking at these sort of new stores coming in, are we looking at these as new sources of taxes? Or, I mean, a lot of these are replacing businesses that were there. So will they ultimately make an impact on sort of the bottom line of tax collection, or is it just,
So I'd say if these spaces weren't filled, it would have an impact on our tax collection by having vacancies that decrease the income received by the business owner. Our assessors assess the properties on an income approach where they take into account the lease values that the property owner is taking in. So by filling these spaces, we keep the property assessment at the highest it can be. If there were several vacancies, then that would eventually fall.
And I would say it presents itself as a buffer against tax abatements. Because of the lag in the valuation process, the property owner could come back down the road and say, you kept it at a steady rate, but we actually had, let's say, 20% vacancy versus a normal rate of 5%. So we think we should get an abatement. That's how we'd see it come through the assessor's office. So it's good to have them released, but it doesn't add new growth.
Right. They're
Nora,
just,
do me a favor, just touch on homes too, because I want to go back to something that is presented oftentimes by Stephanie with respect to that.
Sure. So Home 2 is a 131 room hotel that was approved by the planning board in 2022. However, no permit application has been pulled to date. It is my understanding that the property was sold by New England Development to the operator of Home 2 Hotel. And it's my understanding that they did not estimate with the growth in the cost of building materials in mind that we saw following the pandemic. And so they have underestimated the cost of the hotel that they have approval for and have not yet received approval from the corporation to go forward with that. I keep hearing that it is in the works for some time this year, but there's no application, and until there's an application filed, I don't really take stock in that.
Right. And just to then dovetail that with some of the budget presentations that Stephanie does, when she talks about we budget new growth conservatively, you know, when that was approved in 2022, you know, we had projections for what that might add to the tax rolls, but you can't count your chickens until they're hatched. And this is one of those situations where had we, you know, assumed that revenue, then we would have had a shortfall. So that's why we take such a conservative approach to new growth, because you don't know necessarily when shovels are going in the ground and when, you know, certificate of occupancies are going to be realized to then realize the full commercial valuation. So it's just reinforcing for folks why we take that conservative approach to budgeting new growth.
Yes. And then the two businesses that we touched on briefly, Mass General Brigham Women Expansion and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute Proton Therapy Center. So the Mass General project is on hold. It actually received its approval from the planning board a ways back, but they're still awaiting state approval. They attempted to gain approval for, I believe it was 5 separate expansions in Massachusetts, and it was denied by the state. And the plan is to come back with Westwood as an individual project expansion. Right now, the Brigham and Women's property is about 35,000 square feet. This would increase it by another 50,000 square feet.
Sorry, Nora. And then just to add to Julie's question with respect to pilot agreements, payment in lieu of taxes agreements, Mass General Brigham was at the very beginning of the development of University Station. And so they have a pretty favorable pilot agreement. With the Dana-Farber agreement, we looked at what would be the taxes that we would realize from best and highest use of that parcel, and we were able to secure a payment in lieu of taxes that is equivalent or better and that grows over time. So when they finally come in, break ground, and we've got a sort of a stepped approach to the development there to realize taxes. So I think, you know, that's one where we have some good revenues forecast, although they will not add to the commercial tax rolls.
Right, because Brigham and Women and Dana-Farber are both exempt from taxation. They don't get counted on either side of the ledger. They're not commercial, they're not residential, there's simply no tax dollars. There's income to the town. The town receives income from those properties, but it does not move the needle in our commercial tax value. In the Providence Highway area, we have a couple of projects underway. One is the Foster Block mixed-use multifamily residential overlay district development that was recently approved by the planning board. This is Petruzziello Properties mixed-use project. It has about 12,000 square feet of commercial development and 160 units, apartment units, 1 to 3 bedroom apartments. That will be significantly balanced towards the residential tax value. We'll have some commercial value that's all new growth, but a lot of that property will also add to the residential property value in town. And then we have the Mercedes expansion. That's a building, I can't remember, I believe it was in the late 90s that the original Mercedes building was constructed, and now they're undergoing a significant expansion and renovation, and that work is underway. Washington Street area, we have Lords and Ladies at 190 Washington Street. That's the former Eastern Insurance building, and that is being converted to a service use on the first floor for a hair salon and office space upstairs. Then we have Stephen David's property. It says 36. I'm sorry, that's 436 Washington Street. That's a mixed-use development. The former K&S printing shop that sat vacant for well over 20 years. That will be completely redeveloped. It's been demolished, and the new building that will be placed there will have office on the first floor and 5 affordable apartments above. And then we have a monument shop that's going into 384 Washington Street, which is the same building where I showed you the Nightingale Wealth Solutions property.
Nora, what's taken so long for the monument shop to actually move forward? Didn't they get a permit 18 months ago or so?
So they received a permit in 2021 that actually they allowed that permit to expire without doing any work. We took them back to the planning board and got them a new special permit to not only operate the monument shop. It's an interesting situation. Like many properties on Washington Street, there's a significant lack of parking. So the monument shop had originally in 2021 gone to the planning board to get a special permit to operate with less than the required number of parking spaces. They never really got their act together and moving into the building, but they sublet to Nightingale Wealth Solutions. They did that, however, without counting on the need for that business to have additional parking. So we had to bring them back to the planning board for a new special permit so that we now have those 2 businesses operating in that building with insufficient parking for our, to meet our zoning bylaw. But the planning board concluded that due to the hours of operation of the 2 businesses, they will be able to share the parking that's available. So nothing is stopping the monument shop other than the business owner taking their time in getting into the space.
Thank you.
And then the High Street area, we have a couple of things. Barcino is coming in the spring of this year. That is filling the space that was formerly Chiara. The owners of Chiara retired this year and sold the space to Barcino. We have the Obed Baker House mixed-use development. This is a significant one because it will add new growth, and it will take property that was not on the tax rolls because it was town-owned property, and it's now publicly owned property. It will have, it's mixed use, so it will have a residential component as well as a commercial component. The residential component is a redevelopment of the historic Obed Baker House into 2 units of housing, 1 on the first floor, 1 on the second floor, and the commercial portion of it is a approximately 4,000 square foot veterinary clinic that's going on the space next to that. So that's a significant project because we sold the property, so we received income for the sale of the property. We get the property back on the tax rolls, and we see actual commercial growth. So then future commercial opportunities. What else can we look at? We clearly our expenses are not going down. And so we need to constantly chase new growth. So we have to look more at University Avenue area for potential redevelopment under the Flexible Multiple Use Overlay District 1. That's a district that allows mixed use development and has a very flexible way for the planning board to look at the dimensional requirements associated with the property. So a couple of properties that are ripe for redevelopment. Uni Ave owns 3 it's actually 3 buildings on the east side of the street and 2 buildings on the west side of the street, all of which are occupied, and they serve purposes. The buildings are full with a lot of manufacturing and research and development facilities, but they could do more. If they're interested, they could redevelop those properties and we could see significant new growth. We also have the Cornerstone building, an office building that was constructed, I believe, in the 1970s. And there's potential for a larger building at that site. In the Providence Avenue area, we have a lot of old, tired buildings. This I include in Providence Avenue area. I look at also Southwest Park, Glacier Everett, and then Providence Avenue itself. So there's a FMUOD 3 area that overlays the Glacier Everett property. That's where Frugal Fanny's is. There's an Algonquin gas building. The same entity that owns the UniAv properties at on University Avenue also owns 6090 Glacier Avenue. That is, it's a different name. It's Caruth Capital, but it's all part of the same parent organization. They have the potential to attain greater development in their property. And then Lambert's Plaza was recently sold. There are new owners that have that. Lambert's has a 10-year lease with the new owners. So that's not changing anytime soon, but the other, and all the other spaces are currently full, but there's an opportunity and the owner is interested in upgrading the facility. So that may end up seeing new growth. And then we have the ever-present Budget Inn, which is also ripe for redevelopment.
Nora, isn't the Lambert's Plaza residential zoning though?
It is, and there are several properties on Route 1 that are residentially zoned, pre-existing non-conforming uses. Also would fall into that would be the Knowledge Beginning Daycare, the Oak Hill Nurseries, Aston Martin. All of those properties are residentially zoned but commercially developed. They can be redeveloped by going to the zoning board for a change of non-conforming use.
I remember past attempts to change the zoning to a commercial business district.
There are abutters who believe that they are somehow protected by having that property residentially zoned. The opposite's really the case. If it was commercially zoned, what could and couldn't go there would be clearly defined in our bylaw. Because it is a residential zone with a pre-existing non-conforming use, the property owner can go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a special permit to alter that use. And there's less assurance of what could end up there. There's a 3-member appointed board making a decision on a property with no firm guidelines on what it could be. It's a discretional review by the zoning board, as opposed to having it be in a commercial zone with well-defined uses and far less discretion in development. So the Washington Street area, there are potential for flexible multiple use overlay district mixed use redevelopment of all of the properties south of Roach Brothers. Between Roach Brothers and the new Stephen David project that was the former K&S Printing, all of that land is tired. The buildings on it are tired. They are mostly occupied. The gas station has been vacant for a number of years, but most of the other buildings do have some use in them. However, if the owners join together, they could create a substantial redevelopment of the area. Then in the High Street area, this is somewhere I think that we want to focus strongly in the coming years. There is potential for FMUOD 7 mixed-use development. In the 2022 town meeting, the FMUOD 7 district was expanded to take in not only the Oak Red Baker House property, but the property next to that where Dunkin' Donuts and Westwood Pizza, Blue Orchid are. That allows mixed-use development of that property. The Good Plaza, where the post office to the toast office are, that has been in the FMUOD district for, I think, since 2014, and that has potential for redevelopment. And then there are other properties that are pre-existing non-conforming uses that are not in the FMUOD district. So one I show here is McCracken Auto and Sassy Building. That, like Lambert's, it's in a residential zone, but it's a commercial development, and there is potential for redevelopment of that. If the zoning remains residential, the redevelopment would have to be with a zoning board of appeals special permit.
But I think it's worth noting that these are privately held properties. The town can't force redevelopment. And heretofore, at least the ones you were just showing, there has been no indication from the private property owners that they want to even invest in maintaining what they've, I mean, for the most part, not completely for those
Yes,
examples,
although
but for the most part, no reinvestment's gone into the property.
that's true. Although I can say that we have had more positive discussions with property owners over the last couple of years than in the past 15 years. And I think part of that is that the property owners are seeing the values obtained by other developments throughout town, especially in Islington Center. And I think they're at least thinking about what the possibilities are. So
That's very good. Yep.
I'm hopeful, but there are no applications on the table right now.
Real quick,
And then
Nora,
in the,
just had a question from Julie.
Just Nora, in that stretch of land, what about Bubbling Brook? Why didn't you include that as a development?
well, the reason I didn't is I think that would be, from a traffic point of view, a very difficult parcel for redevelopment. It is zoned for business, but it is not zoned for mixed use. And the use that's there now, although it's a seasonal use, during the season, it's very active. It's a high value parcel, and I could see it being redeveloped by Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or some business like that that would operate throughout the year. But from a traffic point of view and effects on nearby residential properties, that's not something that I would encourage. I don't think the value to the town would be significant enough to offset the detriments to the neighborhood. And then we have finally the East Street Allied Drive area. So here we have potential redevelopment of the Meditech property. This has not yet been offered for sale, but it is no longer being actively used by Meditech. And it's a large building, but more significantly, a very large parcel. And I think this is a property that we want to keep our eye on for potential redevelopment. It's in the ARO zone, which is our Administrative Research Office District, which has some significant limitations on what could go there. And so the town might want to consider whether or not that's the most appropriate zone or if it should be considered for different zoning. And then we have one other thing that, looking back in records, there was an office building approved for the same parcel as the public storage property back in the early 2000s, but it was never constructed. I think the reason it wasn't constructed was that the parking requirements were extensive, and it's immediately adjacent to a residential neighborhood, and the residential opposition was strong. But it is, it's a parcel that has room for growth. So that's something that we also might want to look at. It, for anyone who doesn't know where that is, it's right off of the East Street Rotary. So I'm going to stop there. That is that's the extent of commercial development we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, and what's on track for this coming year, and then my assessment of what we can look to in the future. However, I do want to just make it clear that even if every project I had mentioned went forward and we were able to redevelop University Avenue, Providence Highway, High Street, those properties on Washington Street, I don't think any of that would ever get us back up to 20% of our total property value being commercial property value. So I just want that to be a measured guideline for going forward.
And you know, compounding that is the fact that it would be a multi-year process, even if it were all systems go right now, right? So thank you, Nora. This is really, really helpful. And I thought it was really important that this group, you know, we spend so much time looking at lists of projects that carry significant cost. But, you know, we realize and recognize the importance of new growth in our overall sustainable budget model and the importance of new commercial growth specifically. And so that was why I had asked Nora to come, because you all as members of this committee may get questions. And I want to make sure that you're as up to speed with respect to the development that's going on, the efforts, and where current opportunity zones are. But as Nancy highlighted, those are owned by private property owners, and they would have to want to redevelop those properties. So, there's none of it that is directly within our control, but it is an important part of the calculus. Julie Bride.
One last question. So on that, and this was very helpful, thank you, Nora. Does the town or select board have a perspective on future growth and how much of it do we want to have kind of not-for-profit organizations in those spaces? I'm assuming that the pilot monies that we're getting isn't the same as if it was, for-profit paying taxes.
So that would be true with respect to Brigham, right? As I said, they have a very favorable deal. We were able to negotiate a deal with Dana-Farber to ensure that we were getting the equivalent or better than what the highest and best use would be for that parcel down at University Station. And that's one that actually will add to overall economic activity from the ecosystem down there, right? Because as people come, oftentimes those types of treatments and proton facilities like that are multi-day successive treatments. So that will lead to hotel stays, restaurant visits, retail visits, et cetera. So, that's one that while we're realizing significant payments as part of that pilot, there's, sort of an economic ecosystem viability that they help provide to help prevent future shocks when things happen. Like if you think about how much the restaurants and hotels were impacted during COVID, right? This would be a little bit of a shelter from that. So
can I add to that? Oh, go ahead, Julie. I was wondering if it was worth noting, back when University Station was being negotiated with the development team, so we're talking 2011, 12, the town initiated terms in the development agreement that allowed us to have pilot agreements, a requirement that should any nonprofits want to come to that location, they would have to make a stop at the select board and allow for negotiation of a pilot agreement. So fortunately, that was put in place because if any of you recall what University Avenue looked like back around that time, a lot of the buildings had been torn down and it was 100+ acres of rough land. We were concerned that a hospital could come in and take up a substantial portion of all the available land, or a college campus, or something that would make most of it nonprofit status. So at least the pilot agreement terms were built into the development agreement, and that's how we got received some beneficial pilot payments, even from Brigham. What we did at the time was a 20% of the relatable 25 tax amount. 25, thanks, Nora. So that was the same terms they had in the city of Boston. So at least it protected us somewhat.
And we have, and Nora can speak to this probably more gracefully than I can, but we have built in a continuation of that requirement with the Dana-Farber agreement as well.
Yes, and it's important to note that University Station is the only place in town that has that level of protection through a development agreement. So any other parcels anywhere in town are potential targets for nonprofit organizations. And we rezoned our medical facility uses about 3 or 4 years ago, specifically because those are the uses that are most likely to be nonprofit organizations coming in. And we redeveloped the zoning districts to limit where those could go, specifically to stop influx of nonprofit, especially medical facilities, coming in, say, the rest of University Avenue outside of University Station, where we didn't have the control and we couldn't require a development agreement. But properties throughout town, residential properties, can be developed by exempt organizations as well as commercial properties. So that's something that, we have to stay on top of. If a nonprofit wants to operate in Westwood, we can always ask for a pilot agreement. We just can't Can't require it unless there's a trade going on there, unless they need a special permit or they need a variance or they need some form of not by right approval.
So I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I appreciate everyone's time. I want to ask, are there any final questions for Nora before we adjourn? There was nothing for us to sort of act on. This is really trying to give you the full picture of both sides of the ledger and where we stand in terms of development, why it's important relative to our overall tax base and our sustainable budgeting model. And so, Nora, thank you very much for this incredible review of what we've done, what's in the works, and what might be possible in the future. Nancy Hyde, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, before you break, can you just give us a really quick update on the facility study status, where we are in the timeline of that being procured and completed?
I'm going to ask Chris if he has an update on that.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be meeting with Michelle later this week to go over that, and then we're going to be meeting with Tim to go over that. Our hope is to get that out by the end of this month or early February.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
And then how long do you think, Chris, do you expect that to take before we'll sort of see
the procurement?
Yeah. No, not the procurement. Once the procurement's done, the actual study itself.
Well, we're working with the consultant on that. So after we have an opportunity to meet with the consultant and have our kickoff meeting with that consultant, we'd have a better understanding of the timeline based off of their estimations.
Okay. So
Tim, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I would just say to that the two, because there are going to be two separate studies, right? One from the school department, one for the town, but ideally procured from the same architectural firm. The goals on the school department timeline are to have our visioning work done by the end of this school year, and to have the capital work done by the time we hit the capital budget cycle next fall. So that's around October or so.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just add on to what Tim just said, Tim and I had conversations previously, and we certainly understand the time sensitivity from the school standpoint. So if the firm could only has a capacity to really deal with one at a time or deal with one first, then the schools would go first.
Okay. See a question from Nancy James.
So first, Nora, thank you so much. This was very valuable. Is there a way or other plans to share with the community as a whole this presentation? Because I hear a lot of questions about taxes or get asked, or there's a lot of discussion about taxes. I think University Station is viewed as, sort of the be all end all for the town of Westwood. And there's a number of factors. So I think it would be valuable to find a way to communicate this to the town.
That's part of why we record these things as well, because it will go up on the Westwood Media Center YouTube channel and their website. And I'm sure we can probably do a little more in the way of social media sharing that this conversation took place. Any other thoughts, Chris?
We may also ask Nora to attend a future select board meeting and provide a very similar presentation.
Happy to do that.
Using social media, I noticed that several times Dottie Powers will post something, or within town hall, something gets posted on Facebook. Maybe there could be a posting of this meeting as a go-to for people who have questions regarding taxes, commercial tax-based contributions and stuff, what Nancy's referring to, that we could push it out, as opposed to having people have to be initiating going to a website or something.
Yep.
Make it more available.
And if you can make it shareable, we can share it too.
Absolutely. Yep. So I hope that you all follow the town of Westwood's social media channels, and when those things are put out there, by all means, I encourage you to share them. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, yes, Chris Coleman.
Thank you. I just want to, Tish just reminded me, we can also share this through the wire, which is the electronic communication that we have for the community. And for any members or anyone watching this meeting, if you haven't signed up, you can go to the homepage under the Notify Me section. You can sign up to be on that distribution list.
Paul McLaughlin, I see you have a hand up.
Just very quickly, just speaking of social media, there's obviously a Westwood Facebook group, which isn't the town official one, but there's a lot of information shared there and sometimes misinformation. And this happens in every town. And I would just implore the people that have the answers, sort of keep an eye on it to help mitigate that a little bit, because sometimes they're saying things that are off the wall. So
Thank you, Paula.
Whatever do you mean, Paula?
So I will before
Rob, we also have a few meeting minutes to approve, if you don't mind, before we adjourn.
Okay, yep. So why don't we take us through those, Stephanie, and then the last thing I want to do before we adjourn is just try to look towards a future date, and based on what we have to talk about and where the facility study that may help drive future date. So
All right, the first meeting minutes are from the August 22nd, 2023 meeting. If everyone's had a chance to review those, I can go through and if we have a motion to approve.
Yeah, I move we approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay, Rob?
yes, aye.
Nancy Hyde?
Aye.
Chris Paff? No. Maya?
May I had to drop for another meeting, as does Tim, so.
Okay.
Apologies, but over.
Julie Bride?
Aye.
Nancy James?
Aye.
Melissa McDonough?
Aye.
Paul McLaughlin?
Aye.
And Skip Wells.
Aye.
And then the next date is the meeting minutes of September 14th, 2023. If I could have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Rob?
Aye.
Nancy Hyde?
Aye.
Maya Plotkin? No, not here. Julie Bride?
Aye.
Nancy James?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Paula McLaughlin?
Aye.
And Skip Wells.
Aye.
And then the last one is from October 24th, 2023. Could I have a motion to approve those meeting minutes? Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Rob?
Aye.
Nancy Hyde?
Aye.
Julie Bride?
Aye.
Nancy James?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Paula?
Aye.
And Skip Wells?
Aye.
All right, that's all on my end.
We adjourn.
Okay, so I don't see a need for us to meet in February, as we will not have any real news with respect to the facilities study. And I think what we'll do is we'll look to March only if we feel like there's something specific for us to discuss. I want to respect everybody's time and you know what you dedicate to this. So I only want to meet when we have something substantive to discuss. So let me get with Chris and Stephanie on when the next most appropriate time for us to reconvene, and we'll put together a poll to see what everybody's availability is. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Steph, can you call the roll? You're on mute.
Thank you, Rob. Rob?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes, aye.
Julie Bride?
Aye.
Nancy James?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Paula?
Aye.
And Skip?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and appreciate your participation. And Nora, thank you again for a really fantastic and comprehensive update.
Thanks, Nora.
Thanks, Nora.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Nora.
Bye, all.